Legendary Heroes, a Gauntlet Dark Legacy based fic. Chapter 15. Never Make Wishes. Deep in the inner sanctum under the mystic pyramid, the dark genie resided, his power growing. His overtaking of the desert realm was almost complete. He had corrupted the temple of the Magi, and the mystic pyramid was channeling power down to his sanctum. As his influence grew, he could sense wishes from the nomads in the desert and perverted them to his means. Those that wanted power, he turned into minions of his. If they desired eternal life, he transformed them into the undead. If they wanted wealth, he would trap them in a cave with gold that they could not escape. He paused in his wish granting when he heard beings enter his lair. He turned around to see some of the mummies and sandmen entering, with some of the few remaining people left. For a moment he scanned over them, looking for the one figure he wanted to find. He brought his scimitars into existence and addressed the prisoners. "I want to know where the oneness Toyotai is. If you answer, you will be rewarded." He waited for a moment, keeping his gaze locked on the group. As he did so, he could see their deepest desires, as well as how much they kept those secret. One of the group didn't hide his desires so deep. That was the one who would reveal what he wanted to know. All he needed to do was keep his eyes locked on the group and mentally send out the urge to tell to that one. It didn't take long for one of the people, the one he knew it would be, to push forward saying, "I saw where he went. He entered a magical portal to the Tower of Sumner." While it was the information he wanted, the fact that the wizard had managed to get out of the desert realms before his power could contain things irked him. Ethereal connections, like a strong wizard's tower, were very difficult to contain. He would, however, have several minions ready for where and when the spot would appear again. He then looked at the man and smiled. "Very good. For that I shall reward you." He motioned one of the Sandmen minions he had to move forward and sent a whirlwind to engulf the two. He took delight in the screams of pain coming from the man as the magical wind started to merge the two beings together. As the whirlwind did its job, he looked over at the remaining group and pointed his scimitars towards another doorway in his chamber. Two mummies emerged from it, and he said, "Take them down to the mummification chambers. Their souls can help create more to keep the tombs safe from any invaders who get that far." He watched as the mummies and the guards with the prisoners started to drag them down. He delighted in hearing wails of fear from the prisoner and the occasional strike the guards had to make. He looked back at the whirlwind, watching it take on a darker hue. He even saw some of his smaller clones occasionally pop out to wipe their swords on the sand. Not that they had to do so. Unlike his own swords, their swords were like their own bodies, constructs of wind. While the process continued, the genie brought up an image of the mystic pyramid and the temple of the Magi. The progress of corrupting both of those was going nicely. He had created switches all over the place to change the floors in a massive area of the temple of the Magi, and he had given the mystic pyramid the look of surreal incompletion. Parts of it looked like it needed to be finished and floated in the air. Those still free in the desert realms would look at it, and if they weren't magically inclined, it would drive them to madness. He turned away when he heard one of his existing generals arrive in his sanctum, bringing with them a runestone and what looked like a pair of bellows. The bellows had a puff of toxic green gas coming from the nozzle end of it, making him wonder if it was some sort of weapon. Once they had stopped, the genie saw another image appear, hovering in the air, and in a brief moment he recognized the image of Scorn. He bowed for a moment, responding to the image of his lord. "Scorn, my lord, to what do I owe this honor? Do you have a task for me?" He watched as Scorn nodded and then looked over at the objects that had just arrived. "Indeed, I can tell your corruption of the desert realm is going well. I want you to find some hiding spots for this runestone and the poison bellows that will harm the Spider Queen. I don't want them discovered at all." The evil genie laughed as he heard that, knowing full well that the request would be very simple. "You have sent them to the right place. One thing the people of this land had been good at is secret chambers in their tombs and holy places. I'll have my generals, including the newest one, place them in two separate areas." At that moment he saw the whirlwind creating his new general end, and the figure looked momentarily dazed. He looked at the two generals and said, "Take those to two different hiding places. I don't want them to be in the same place should that wizard return." When the two generals nodded and started taking the items away, he returned his attention to Scorn. "I have found out that the wizard that tried to stop my return headed off to Sumner's Tower. He may return with help." He noticed that Scorn looked grim at that bit of news. He wondered if he had displeased the demon, but relaxed when Scorn finally spoke. "That is a problem. I figured Sumner would react, but he's not strong enough to stop me now. At least not alone. Luckily, I have more forces to use thanks to his foolish brother. I will send some gargoyles for you to command. The lion ones actually have firepower, so they will be a fine addition to the desert realms." The genie laughed at that. He actually had many places to place them. He could place them all over the tunnels where the mummies were. He could place them all over the town and the Temple of the Magi. He even had a place where he could put two of them. He figured any hero sent would be unable to tackle two of the things at once. A grim thought crossed the genie's mind then, and he asked his master about the one thing that could be a problem. "What of that accursed lamp? Where did it end up?" The last thing he wanted was that damn lamp being used to blind him again. While he was an agent of darkness, the darkness that lamp held he could not see through, allowing enemies to scatter out of his attack waves. It could cause his downfall should it be brought out again. He saw Scorn look at him. "Do not worry. I am sure it will be in a very cold place, but also a dangerous place to linger around for too long. I doubt any hero will be able to locate it. This world will be ruined before anyone can stop us." He heard Scorn laugh with that last statement, and he couldn't help but join in. After a moment, he saw Scorn fade from sight, and he decided to increase his forces before the gargoyles arrived. He turned to some of the sand flowing into his chamber through cracks in the walls and cast a spell at them. Soon, the sand was swirling and taking on a roughly humanoid shape. The genie was well aware of how strong sand could be, and as it packed together into those humanoid forms, he could see it was going to be strong. Once it was done, and they had horrifying faces glowing an evil blackish color. He smiled at the legion of sand golems and commanded them, "Go forth and find a place to blend in. Should anyone choose to oppose me, strike them down." He watched as they all saluted him with a roar and lumbered out of the chamber. Once the gargoyles arrived, a part of him wanted to see the wizard return and try to get past all his forces. It was enough to make him laugh again.